Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is our Welcome to We Education. This is going to be an incredible show that we have for you tonight. It's going to be really inspiring. And we asked that question, what can we do together that we can't do on our own? And we're going to answer that question today with having the experience of education transformation for a culture of peace. And I'm Karen Palmer. I am Mindful Media Mom and Miss Kindness. And you can find me on all social media as Mindful Media Mom. I'm going to be one of your hosts here today. I have a wonderful friend and the founder of We the World, who is my co-host. And let me just share a little bit about him so that we can So we have Rick Ulfik here, who is the founder of We the World, who is a former New York City school teacher, and he's going to be sharing with us his idea of how we can have a culture of peace. He's also the co-founder of the 11 Days of Global Unity. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's great to be co-hosting with you as always. And let me let people know about Karen, our co-host. Karen Palmer is a mom who made a wish that sparked a kindness revolution. She is a global kindness leader and educator. Karen is a live stream and social media expert who designs musical coloring books and toys to help co-create a kinder world. She is a best-selling author and co-produces several popular online talk shows and radio shows, including this one. She is a recording artist of conscious music, and you can connect with her by going to globalkindnesstv.org. So, as Karen said, I'm founder of We the World and the We campaign at we.net. And just wanted to invite people to get more information and to connect with us in the We campaign by going to we.net. You can sign up there as an individual or an organization to participate with us. And you can also connect with us through the Facebook page, the We Campaign, facebook.com/the We Campaign. So what I'd like to talk with you about today is the idea of transforming education to create a culture of peace. And we will also be hearing from Andy Smallman later in the show, who's going to be talking about that as well. For me, transforming education to create students who are self-motivated to learn can not only raise students' scholastic achievements, giving them important economic and social opportunities, it could also be the key to addressing youth-related issues that affect all of society, such as drug use, gang violence, crime, teen pregnancy, and all of those kinds of things. I was a middle school and junior high school math teacher in the New York City public school system. And I was honored to receive the Parents' Choice, Kids First, and National Educational Media Network Awards. And I was a co-leader of the Education Task Force of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning. Education is an important subject for me, as you can see. So it is of concern that rather than building on the intrinsic curiosity of children, their wonder and their excitement about understanding their world, increasingly, I believe our school system seems to be shifting its attention to external motivations. Students are taught that what counts are test results, teacher approval, and grades. This minimizes the importance of and often suppresses the natural tendency of children who first enter grade school to be eager and ready to absorb knowledge and experience. Other factors enter into it, of course, such as a child's socioeconomic situation in their home life. However, no matter what the child's home life is, the shift from natural curiosity, excitement, and wonder of discovery to attention on external motivations necessary for survival in school can play out in many unfortunate ways. Children realize that their own interests are considered less important than school requirements. On some level, they sense they are not being accepted for who they are. This causes many kids to suppress or otherwise transform parts of their personality to accommodate to the situation. There is also some loss of connection to adults. As external motivation becomes the norm in school, kids who accommodate by being good get used to doing only what is required, except for those subjects they still have an interest in. Other kids for whom school becomes a tedious chore at best may become discipline problems. They may miss school frequently by being sick, and in high school, they may just drop out entirely. Children, as well as teachers and even schools, are pulled into a culture of competition in which comparisons are made between those who get good test scores and grades and those who don't. This again reinforces the external as motivation rather than curiosity and interest in the content of the subjects. And it becomes the first warning to kids that they better look out for themselves because the rest of the world is doing just that. Eventually, children learn about the necessity for doing well in school to facilitate making money, the ultimate external motivation. By the time many kids get to high school, the process of learning for them has become unpleasant work, and it continues to be forced on them. If some children see school as disagreeable and potentially dangerous because of grades and tests, then trust and respect for teachers and other adults can be damaged. Those kids will then be less likely to confide in and accept guidance from adults regarding sex, drugs, violence, and other issues. And kids may learn that doing well in school to make money later is more important than the joy they might receive from a particular subject. By contrast, when children are self-motivated to learn, their academic achievement in areas of their interest frequently exceeds scholastic standards. If their motivation is nurtured, their skills in reading also improve as they seek to learn more and more about their areas of interest. This leads to acquiring knowledge and skill in other subject areas, as well as improvement in general learning skills and a sense that learning is fun and useful. Combine this with positive acknowledgement by teachers and the school system in general, and you have children who are self-confident and positive influences on the children and adults around them. This atmosphere of internal motivation is equally important for teachers, for it will allow them to sustain and rejuvenate their own enthusiasm and not leave the profession, as many do, frustrated because of the system. That's what happened with me. When I was a math teacher in the New York City school, public school system, I was teaching 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade math. I tried several experiments, many of which really paid off. And one example directly relates to what we're talking about. During the first few days of classes, my usual routine would be to spend time asking students to share about their lives, their neighborhoods, and what they like to do. I would take the first couple of days, and instead of talking about the curriculum and algebra or whatever it had to be, or whatever it was that we were going to be talking about, I would interview each kid in the class and ask them, what they were doing, what their lives were like, what they were passionate about. Then during the school term, as various math topics and lessons came up, I would use examples and make connections to the situations and interests that those students had initially talked about. So in general, I believe that changing the primary goal of kindergarten or pre-K through 12th grade education to the creation of students who are self-motivated to learn will transform education as we know it, and it will also help to transform our society. In my opinion, it doesn't matter whether students have attained specific levels of proficiency in reading or math by specific or uniform age levels in this age group that we're talking about. If they are self-motivated, they will quickly go beyond our current standards in these critical subject areas. As children interact by sharing the subjects they each are learning with the other children and by working together on projects, their receptivity to learning values like empathy, respect, and responsibility will be maximized by being in an environment where they are totally supported and acknowledged for being on their own paths of discovery. I believe a fundamental restructuring of our K through 12 educational system is necessary to create self-motivated students for whom learning is something that they can't get enough of. And I believe that there are many ways that this can be accomplished without any additional costs while strengthening ties to the community. So why don't we leave it there? We can talk about some of the ways that we can do this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Rick. I could not agree more with everything you just stated, especially that it needs to begin in pre-K and go all the way up to high school. And then the high school kids should be coming back over and being mentors to the littler kids.
Exactly.
So that we have this, this cycle. And I would love to see kindness and compassion as a subject in college, and empathy as a college subject, as beautiful as psychology and, psychiatry is, having more options for kindness and compassion as a curriculum. As important as reading, writing, and arithmetic. So we have an incredible guest with us who is an expert at this. And Rick, I would love for you to share his bio, and then we'll bring him in and he can share a little bit of the amazing work that he has done in his corner of the world, and which we want to help ripple out into all corners of the world.
That's great. And thank you. We want to welcome Andy Smallman to our show. Andy Smallman works to promote ordinary activities that awaken kindness, cheerfulness, positivity, and awe, helping people connect to their true nature and increase peace in the world. In 1994, he co-founded the Puget Sound Community School, a unique middle and high school in Seattle with his wife, Melinda Shaw. In 2012, he created an online activity called the Secret Agent of Compassion in support of the internationally known Compassion Games. So he's going beyond the school environment to the global environment to bring more kindness, cheerfulness, positivity, and awe to the world. So welcome to the show, Andy Smallman, and we would love to hear your experience with this show, with this school that you co-founded, and so we can develop some ideas for how we can transform education to create a culture of peace.
Well, thank you, Rick. Thanks for the intro. And Karen, so nice to see you and hear from you again. And Rick, you don't need me because you just said it all. I mean, all what I did.
We need everyone. We need all corners of.
No, I agree. I'm being a little bit silly about that, but yeah. Rick's intro and description of education is just so spot on. It's everything that I have felt as an educator and as a human being going through the school system, and then being somebody that was literally called to be a teacher and then not finding a school that I felt like I could actually be truly human. So I started one. I mean, that's basically what it came down to. So here's basically the story is that I'm the product of a pretty standard public high school system, but was so turned off to education that the last thing I wanted to do was go to college. And I had, by all external measurements, I was a good student, meaning by that standard, I had good grades and I could play the standardized test game. So I got decent scores there and could very, privileged because of that. But my reaction to it was, even at 17, 18 years old, isn't education supposed to help me figure out who I am? And I had no idea actually who I was at that point. I just knew how to jump through hoops and play a game. And for whatever reason, I had the wherewithal not to continue that at age 18. And so I had a series of experiences that took me in various spots in North America to ultimately volunteer in a program called the Big Brothers program and discover that, oh, wow, I'm supposed to work with kids. I was 22 when I started college, and I was on a very clear path to become an elementary school teacher. And what I wanted to do was basically honor what I believe is inherent in each of us as individuals is something unique and important, if you think of it like a puzzle piece to global unity. And that we each have an important piece to that. And part of the role of educators is to help young people discover what that particular piece is. What I discovered as I went through my undergraduate and graduate education was that actually all of what education does is just the opposite of that, which is to try to say, actually, your piece of the puzzle looks like this, and it's a square, and it fits next to this other one that's also a square. And because you're this age and you're this grade, you're supposed to be doing this thing now, not that thing that you want to do. So I finished up my graduate degree with a teaching certificate and thought, yeah, I guess I'm not going to be a teacher. I don't want to perpetuate that. And through a series of what just ended up being kind of based on personal needs, I became a substitute teacher, which led me to being offered a job that I was able to do some experimenting with for a couple years in a very progressive elementary school outside of Seattle. And from that, I pitched an idea for middle school becoming a high school program that was based on the things that Rick was saying. No competition, no grades, age mixing. We're actually going to meet in public places. We're going to honor what makes you as a human being unique, that there's nothing that I can never be your expert. I can simply help you discover what your expertise is. And I've got some experience doing that. I have some life skill and some...
Can you share a story about that with us, Andy? Could you share us a story about that? Maybe a little, somebody who you really felt like you really saw that experience really blossom with somebody?
Well, I got an email not too long ago from a former student of mine who's now in his 30s. So, the school I started was in 1994, and it just finished its 25th year. So, and again, taking middle and high schoolers, not grading them, not putting them in competition with each other, honoring them for who they are. So this email that I got from this young man basically was telling me that his first day at our school, Puget Sound Community School, or PSCS, I encouraged the students. We were in a circle because we spent a lot of time together in circle, really talking to each other and getting to know each other. And I always would explain to people that education is a process to experience and not a problem to solve. And a lot of what we find teachers do is treat children and their lesson plans as problems to solve, meaning that there is like a right answer, we're going to get there. And a process is something else that, you know, you're experiencing something and it's an unfolding. And so I was explaining that to for these students on the first day of school year. And this young man was 13 in his first year. And I said, I would love to hear if anyone has any questions. And I later found out, took a risk and he asked me a question. And a couple of people kind of laughed because it seemed like it was a pretty evident answer. And what he told me, actually, he mentioned this at his graduation, that what I did is say there's no such thing as a silly question if it's a genuine question that anyone has. And so he felt affirmed in that particular moment. Now, these are things that I would think that any decent teacher would do, kind of like falling off a rock. It's not hard to affirm somebody, and especially if in that moment you feel that they may have felt a little stab of humiliation. In fact, one of the things that I've told people, I think the main job that students experience in school every day is to avoid humiliation. That's the one thing they go to school to do because of the structure of schools.
Right, absolutely.
They're just trying to save face all day long. And if we can change the environment, they don't have to go to school with that being their primary focus. So anyway, I tried to help with that. He later told me that he had come out of his middle school experience the year before, where he was told that he could only ask like a certain number of questions. In fact, he had put on his desk a series of Post-it notes. So he came to school one day, and this was like end of elementary school. He arrived at school, and his desk was covered in Post-it notes, blank Post-it notes. And the teacher asked him, so why do you think there are Post-it notes on your desk? And he said, I don't know. And the teacher said, well, because you ask so many questions, what I've decided to do is every time you ask a question, I'm going to take a Post-it note away. And when your Post-it notes are gone, you can't ask any more questions. And I know it's kind of horrid, right? And so that would be even a question, can I go to the bathroom or, you know, whatever, that would be a Post-it note would be taken away. So what he had learned to do was to stop asking questions and to go and kind of hide himself inside. But he had the wherewithal on his first day at this new school to ask a question. Now, a couple of people, like I said, kind of sniggered at that a little bit. And I responded and said, there's no such thing as a bad question. Please continue to ask questions. So he shared that when he graduated from PSCS. And part of a graduation ceremony at PSCS is students share a personal, we'll call it a credo. So they share this, what they stand for. And he embedded that into his presentation.
Wow.
And so that it changed his life. Well, here's the kicker to all of this. So, you know, he's 18 at the point he graduated. That story that he was talking about was at 13, which I don't really fully remember. I mean, I can remember it in a general sort of way.
But it really, really affected his life.
And he was able to connect that dot. Well, he's in his 30s now, and he wrote to me when he found that I had retired, I'd stepped down from the school a year ago, to tell me that that moment is what led him to what he's doing now. He's a teacher himself, working with special needs young adults at kind of the collegiate level, and said that he got that gift from me, which is what propelled him to do what he now does professionally. So you get that kind of connection.
That's
so
great.
he found what his gifts are and what he's contributing, you know, what I call that piece to the overall whole. And he contributes to that. And now, if you think of it as a baton, he hands that on to the students that he's working with, having had that experience himself. The downside to that story, of course, is that he had such pain and hurt to begin with. And what Rick's describing is we're talking about transforming for a culture of peace, transforming education for a culture of peace. That young man did not experience peace in his education until he came to the school that I had started. And then he experienced that, but he had to undo a lot of pain. What if we don't create the pain to begin with? So
I agree.
That's
exactly. So I'm very interested to hear from you what some of the challenges that you faced with creating this kind of what I would call radical kind of school. So one big question is, how does that kind of school with the goals that you outlined, how does that fit in with a sort of a mainstream educational system that has requirements for tests and graduation requirements, all of that stuff? How does that, could you describe how the school works in that way?
Sure. So, I mean, that's a really good and insightful question. To begin with, to start, I was really not going to pay a lot of attention to those kind of external pieces. I did not want the external requirements to dictate what would happen internally, because doing that then totally changes the internal environment. So we started with that. That was easier to do when we began and we were focused on middle school. As those students grew into high school age, some of them would leave to go to a program where they could get an actual diploma. So I had to take a look at, and the staff and I had to look at, okay, what do we need to do to become state approved so we could actually offer a diploma?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking 25 years of history here. So there's a lot of learning and a lot of evolving and a lot of advocating for a particular progressive brand of education.
Right.
The school is also, and still is, in Seattle and Washington State. And Washington State, fortunately, has a fairly liberal educational perspective, meaning that when I contacted and talked to the superintendent of public instruction, what I learned was you don't actually have to take an English class to graduate from high school. That's not to say that our students didn't take English classes or, fill in whatever, social studies or whatever. What they explained to me is, what really you get to set as an educational institution that's been approved because you meet fire code and you meet safety code and on these different things within your facility, you set your own graduation requirements. That was liberating. So what would be the graduation requirements that we would be interested in setting? And they're all about, really about two things: self-awareness and community awareness. So what we built then was a program around this idea of students getting to know who they are, truly who they are. I don't mean like who they think they're supposed to be. I mean who they are. And a lot of high schoolers and middle schoolers too don't differentiate that when they come into the program. They first think that what I mean is to do what they think I want them to do. So that takes some shift as well, which we can talk about. And then the community piece is to help them recognize they're part of something bigger than themselves. So that's the two kind of pronged pieces. So, but you still, Rick, not having grades, you face issues. Not having tests, you face certain issues. Not having the institution itself designate people into like 10th, 11th, 12th grade or whatever, but letting the students figure that out as they move through the school, what grade they are in, and not having to be age dependent. I mean, these are all things that when they then look at themselves and others look at them from an outside standpoint, call it college admissions or whatever, it does create an additional, I would say, I call it an opportunity, but it would also be a challenge for the students who don't have a grade point average to apply to college, or who might have a transcript that instead of just being a page of earned credits is what the students at our school have is a booklet of experiences with their own self-reflections built into it.
That's awesome.
And descriptions of all the activities that they have done over the course of their experiences in the school, some of which they coordinated and created themselves. And so it's a different educational model. So it's gotten a lot easier in 25 years for colleges to make sense out of these students than it was, say, in 1994 in the 90s. But we still got a long way to go, from a cultural standpoint.
Right. So it's interesting because my concept was to actually figure out how ordinary, or let's say mainstream, educational institutions can be transformed without, in other words, within a lot of what they consider to be normal, like having grades and tests, but still have the focus be the goal to generate students who are self-motivated to learn. I know ideally what you're talking about would be great, but given that we have these institutions as is, how can we make, within those institutions, make some changes which are not as radical, but could still allow for that to happen. So that was my solution.
Yeah, well, I have my own thoughts about that too. I mean, I've over these two plus decades, I've been asked to answer that particular question at different times. So let's just take, I mean, whatever stereotype people have of the modern high school, the modern American high school, which is a very large, typical institution, that in many ways almost resembles a penitentiary or something, the way that the buildings are structured.
That's right.
But let's say that that's not going to change. You're not going to suddenly change the infrastructure. But what you could change is some of the way things work. I would create mini schools within those, and to create mini communities really around, like beginning with again, using the model as it exists. There are teachers that love what they do. Match them with students who want to actually be with them, as opposed to taking students of the same age constantly and moving them en masse from activity to activity. So Rick, you love to teach math is my assumption. Imagine if you got to surround yourself with students who were really stoked and excited to learn from you, instead of having to spend as much time with those students who are less interested. What happens when you do that is actually all the students ultimately want to learn those things. But we've created right now a dichotomy in which, because there's also a developmental component to this, that when we force them into it, we rob them of a decision that is a critical piece of developmental psychology, is getting to make decisions that have meaning for you as you move through, especially your high school years. And so the students push back against that. And so that's some of what ends up happening. But if you could create within that school environment, because the facilities can be pretty phenomenal too, when you think of the art opportunities and the drama opportunities and the English opportunities and the wood shop and the gym and all of those things that are out there, and you let kids naturally gravitate. It's like we're trying to make everybody have a balanced meal at every moment of their day. What studies even show is that we will eat a balanced meal over time, but we may eat a lot of one thing over a short amount of time. And so
I totally agree.
That's the way that I think you could transform a lot of these facilities. You'd also find that the bullying would decrease, because a lot of bullying is coming out of the forced competition and people not feeling that they measure up. If you could, if I was to say, do one thing within the structures, get rid of grades. That's harder, but if we could get rid of the idea of A, B, C, D's, and F's, that causes students to feel really crummy, or it separates them, or those that are kind of they go for the A and then they end up becoming, if you will, A junkies. They go for it. They don't even care if they learn anything.
They're overachievers.
It's just, their first question in class is, what do I need to do to get an A? They don't care if they learn the material.
That's the external motivation that I was talking about,
So
instead of internal motivation.
If we could do away with that. But even look at what's going on when you look at these college admission scandals, of parents paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get their kids into what they think is going to be the key to their success, their child's success. And
I can't even fathom how they could even think to do that, because you have to perform when you're in college, and you can't just fake that you have that knowledge.
It's the emperor's new clothes of education, where we're all saying that if you have an A, or if you have advanced placement classes or whatever, that you love that you're dressed well, or if you go to Stanford or whatever it is. You don't go to Stanford because you want to go to Stanford. You go to Stanford because it makes you look good. That's the wrong motivator. Go to Stanford because it's a phenomenal educational institution where the professor that you want to learn from happens to be there. That's why you go to Stanford, but that's also why you go to any post-secondary college. Wherever you go, is because it drives you from the inside out.
Unless you have a society that is driven by the ultimate, as I said, the ultimate external motivation, wealth and power.
Right. And that's what also causes us to not feel a sense of peace. If we want to transform education into a culture of peace, we need to nurture that makes each of us unique, down to the 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. We're better at that, but we're not even that good at that. I've told people that education does not have to be rocket science, and we've made it so complicated. The good parents do what any good school can do, and they do it naturally. So if you think of when you have a baby, and you think of parents, with this newborn, now certainly there's a sense of being overwhelmed by that to begin with. But then what you want to do is there's a driving need to keep that little being safe and to provide that little being opportunity. And so if you do those two things throughout the upbringing of children, keep them safe and provide them opportunity, everything else will follow. So we're better at that with our babies and toddlers. When they get to be about 4 or 5 years old, we start not to really trust them in the way that we've kind of trusted that they're going to learn to walk and talk. Because we're driven for these things. We are curious beings that want to develop and get better and stronger and partner. And
we sometimes too, as parents, identify ourselves as that child, and my child needs to be smart and needs to be good at reading and needs to be, we put that pressure on the child instead of letting them express themselves however they want to express themselves.
That's exactly right. That's again another form of external drive that we put on them as parents, and we also may be trying to make up for some personal sense of deficiency that also is rooted in our educational system from when we were in school. So, but what I say is, if we can really create that safe environment, one that children feel that they can really bring their full selves to school, peace is a natural byproduct. Kindness is a natural byproduct. That these things emerge from the students rather than having to be driven from the outside in, or feel like that it's some kind of almost band-aid at times. So exactly. I mean that's what I tried to do. I said that the product of the school that I started is simply a safe and nurturing educational environment. Everything else is a byproduct, and that means everybody who comes inside that school, from a student to the parents, and we would involve dozens of volunteers and anybody, they need to contribute to that. And the part of how you contribute to a safe and nurturing educational environment is you involve people in things that they love to do. And so they want to be there. And so I would also bring in dozens of volunteers, and I would say, I don't really care what it is you do, you just have to love it. If you love it, you're a teacher. And just love it.
There you go. And that gets to what I was kind of developing as a way to bring these ideas into existing school systems in the elementary school level. So it sounds like you were focused on the middle school and high school level, and at the grade level, I think there are some interesting concepts. So what I kind of put together was a way of accomplishing this without any additional costs, which was, of course, another thing which schools will say, existing schools and school systems are, how much is this going to cost? Mm-hmm. So, and it could be accomplished while strengthening ties to the community. So one of the ideas, and I'd love to get your feedback about it, is to first, the concept of teacher in the grade school classroom is expanded to include regular teaching assistants of several types, visiting teachers from other parts of the same school, student teachers from college, high school students, and now we're talking, up through grade 6 or 7, or 5 or 6 in that range. High school students who would come down to the grade school, who would get credit for assisting 1 day a week in grade schools for specific subject areas. Older students from the same school participating in classes, with younger students. Students in the same class who periodically rotate as assistants. And then community elders and other adult volunteers. Parents of the children in the school, even if it's 2 hours every 6 months, it's very valuable. And here's one that is happening already in some schools, though it can be greatly expanded. People from communities, businesses, social service organizations, churches, synagogues, mosques, arts organizations, media organizations, and other enterprises. These community organizations could also be encouraged to contribute materials and equipment, as well as people, to their local schools. This would be mutually beneficial, since the organizations would be reinforcing their ties to the community and introducing their professions to young people. Next, with all of these diverse and interesting assistants available to teachers in existing classrooms on a regular basis, we could, at current expenditures, give considerably more individualized attention to students. The teaching team determines an area that a grade school child really loves. The child is encouraged to get more involved with it. Once a student loves something, it is natural for them to want to learn more about it. Teachers can then teach reading skills within the context of that subject area, as well as math, history, science, the arts, and on. So that's a way that I envisioned transforming the existing teaching environment without any cost and enriching the whole
Interestingly
concept.
enough, Rick, that's what I've been doing with Kindness Changes Everything.
Okay, so tell us what you've been doing.
We actually
Karen.
have. It's such a beautiful segue of what Andy and you are talking about, because we have actually accomplished a year-long program beginning in September, going all the way to June, where we have a week lesson that grows on the next lesson, that grows on the next lesson, that is based in compassion, kindness, and peace education. It's a play in this time that we were able to spend with the kindergarten. I had 2 classes that I did, a kindergarten and a 2nd and 3rd grade combination. And I worked directly with the teachers to create so that it was all within the standards, so that it would help them with their standardized testing. We taught them emotional freedom techniques so that they could do tapping before their testing. We saw incredible results in everything that they were experiencing. But the most important part of it was they felt safe to express themselves creatively. That was the most empowering part for me. And now what we're working with my city council and my mayor to get the funding for this to go to kindergarten, to the entire kindergarten to 3rd grade in 2019 and 2020. So we'll start with, it's a global education that brings a global education to a small town. So we start with the 11 days of global unity. We go into the education of the International Day of Peace. And then the entire month of October is dedicated to Bully Prevention Month. And then the month of November is kindness, because it's World Kindness Day, and we have it be World Kindness Month. And then December is dedicated to unity through the holidays, so that we're talking about how do we see each of the holidays as valuable, and start to, let the children start to understand that even if they have a different belief, they can be great friends and they can learn from each other's cultures, because culture connects us. And then in January, we have the 7 days of rest and reflection. So they learn about how to reflect. They start to write their own reflections about their own inner journeys, and they learn how to do inner journeys and inner adventures. And they learn how to really focus on their breathing, and they learn a combination of all the ancient wisdoms in a beautiful setting where they feel safe and comfortable. And then in February, we do the Harmony Week, and that's all about music and fun and playing together and seeing how each of us have a beautiful part in the symphony, that everyone plays a different instrument. Everybody has a different way that they express themselves, but nobody's wrong. Everybody is part of the symphony. And then in March, we go into Earth Month, which is starting on March 20th, and we go into the history of our very first Earth Day, so that they're learning this throughout the whole month of March, going all the way up until April 22nd. And we used a lot of Andy's work that he was doing as the secret agent of compassion with the compassion games. So we combined all, and then we have in May and in April, we have the Golden Rule Day. And my goal is to have Golden Rule Day be every day. And so we talked about, a lot of the kids didn't even know what the Golden Rule was. And now they have songs about it. They know what it's all about. They know that they want to treat people and themselves the way that they want to be treated. They treat the earth the way that they would like to be treated. And then we go into June, which is International Children's Month. So each of these organizations are all coming together. And what we're going to work on, Rick and I have talked about this in the Charter for Compassion and the Compassion Games and Unify. We're going to put together an education kind of hub where we can put all of these programs, because what I've done is taken sound bites of each of these programs, but so that the parents and the communities and the teachers can take these courses, online courses and on land courses, that they can do more workshops and create these kindness circles where we have the time and the energy focused on letting the children learn how to creatively express themselves and feel safe to speak, and also feel safe to listen, because listening gets scary sometimes for these kids. And you know what I've found, when we opened the lines of communication and we really opened up the kindness circle, these kids really, really opened up about the challenges that they're having as second and third graders, you know, I mean, and they have some serious challenges. One of the little boys' dad is in prison right now. And I didn't know that, but when we opened the lines for communication, he got the talking feather, and it was his turn to talk, because we do the talking circle and we have the passing feather. And when he started sharing about his dad and how he wishes that he could communicate with his dad better, it was so touching that I realized this is so much bigger than all of us can fathom. And how much this education system needs help is really, really important. But what I want to talk about is let's not mandate it. Like, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, we need to mandate a kindness program and mandate a compassion program. And I'm saying, wait, what we need to do is offer it and find a way that the community pays for it. So this is why Rick and I started talking about, you know, how we the world this is where we answer that question. What can we do together that we can't do on our own? So, you know, Sue Blythe has been such a gift to sharing how she's one of the co-producers here on the Welcome to We show, but she is constantly finding ways to really create more community ways for us to really relate these education systems to a culture of peace. So I think like what you've done, Rick, I mean, everything you've said and everything Andy has said is what we can totally ripple out now and continue to, you know, build on this, so that each year, because I did this, my first year was for kindergarten and second and third grade as a pilot program. I did this completely voluntarily. Hundreds of hours I spent creating the curriculum, writing the songs, putting together, we put a full-on musical together for them. And that was amazing to experience, because it was an interactive musical where they were the stars of the show and they could come up and share what they had learned from the year. And then, you know, what we can do now is take this. So I have the funding for kindergarten to third grade for next year. Then the next year we go kindergarten, preschool, all the way up to 8th grade, you know, and we start having a different age appropriate. And Andy has that because his whole website is he's already done that. So it's like, I think that we need to really start connecting the dots and seeing how we can not reinvent the wheel, but work within the system that's already in place, but just bring in a little more kindness and a little more compassion into their day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think so. And I think a key idea that you mentioned is not to try to superimpose it on existing systems, but more like, I guess, get some teachers who feel aligned with these ideas, and people will start to notice, you know, wow, they're doing something very interesting, and it's also resulting in very positive results for the kids, and so it can spread in that way.
Yeah, and the Kindness Changes Everything program was only going to be for a month long. When I was going in, it was with the Kindness Evolution, and we had the month of the Bully Prevention Month in October. So I had gone in and started talking about this in September with the International Day of Peace. And then we went into October, and then the teacher asked me, can you keep coming, because this is really important and what you're teaching is really important. And it was because of the teacher that I was able to, sit down with her and say, what kind of standards are they needing? What are the core standards that that I can be helpful with? So we would do the kindness lesson or the compassion lesson, and then they would reflect and write about it, and then they would get up and read it out loud, which was incredible to watch this whole transformation of these shy little kids, coming into their power. It was so beautiful. Exactly. And it's just like what you're talking about, it's just exactly what you're saying. We actually witnessed it, and I actually got the footage from it. So we've actually done it. And now it's time to, what Andy's doing, going back to Seattle, and what Rick's doing in New York, and what I'm doing here in California. We just need to connect the dots and create something that can be really easily accessible and digestible for all communities.
Exactly. So I guess before we wind up, Andy, any additional thoughts on what we're all saying here?
Well, I've got so many additional thoughts we couldn't wind up, but I'll get
go for it. Go for it.
One, just listening to, I'm happy to hear everything you have to say, Andy.
Oh yeah,
there's no hurry.
I don't think anybody else wants to hear everything I have to say.
No, that's not true.
Oh, well, thanks. So listening to the two of you, what keeps coming back to me is this idea of things resonating. So Rick, when you're talking about all of the really community-based education, everybody from any age can be part of that teaching modality. And really at that point, it's more of a facilitating of learning which is an exploration as opposed to something else. And then Karen has these very concrete things. At the core of all of that, I would say, and Karen, you made this comment of those circles, of those reflection times. You need time to help young people develop reflection skills so they can really internalize the experiences that they're having. That's part of what I meant earlier by those mini communities. It's regularly getting together with a smaller group, and that size can vary, but I think ideally, it's in the 10 to 15 range, and age-wise it can adjust, with an adult or two that has really somebody that they feel that they can trust. And so you spend some time in those mini communities, and within that, you also cultivate a sense of appreciation and gratitude. And you don't edit how the students might let that unfold other than helping them focus on positive, because a lot of times, not just young people, but older people start seeing those as opportunities to complain about something. And it's not intended to be a complaint airing. It's intended to be a positive airing. So just having some work around those areas. So the school that I started would begin and end each day in a community circle to facilitate that. That would be, I guess, one particular piece. And then the other thing I would say is our educational system is built on a model of fear and scarcity. Like when we say there are going to be 2 A's in this class, I wonder who's going to get them. When a teacher uses that approach, that's a scarcity mentality. Really, the whole world is evolving into a trust and abundance mentality. And that's one that, as we experience that growing up, becomes, I think it already resonates with young people when they can experience it. And then as they grow up, that is where peace also comes from, is that it's the old Malvina Reynolds song, The Magic Penny, love is something when you give it away, you end up having more.
Exactly. And it's interesting because the you mentioned about bringing the groups together and changing like the normal boundaries, right, of how, like, bringing having circles and that kind of thing. So my way of or my proposed way of dealing with that in, let's say, a mainstream grade school environment, like when I was teaching 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grades, I had 5 classes a day, 30 kids in a class, right? And you figure, and this is teaching math, right? So how do you do that in that kind of environment, right? So one way is to change the environment and make sure that there's only 10 or 15 kids in a class. But that means transforming, all the stuff and funding and all that stuff. So that's why getting all of these potential assistant teachers in the room who are motivated, they're older kids, other kids, all the ones that I spoke about from the community, then you actually have the possibility of having individual attention. You have 4 or 5 of these people going around even though there are 30 kids in the class, then you have that actual possibility of having that individual attention that's needed. And it's great to then come together too, so you go alternate. One of the things that I used to do when I was a math teacher, we'd have a day when we're going over, because there was going to be a quiz at the end of the week or something like that, right? So the day before the quiz, we would review all of the subjects. And I would sit in the back of the room. And I would say, okay, who's going to be the teacher now and go over what we need to go over for the quiz that's going to happen tomorrow. And then somebody would do that, and they would do it, and I would sit in the back. And then if I saw that they were saying something that wasn't really clear, or they kind of said a point, but I knew that it wasn't that clear, they said it too quickly, or I'd raise my hand and I'd say, okay, wait, I have a question. What do you mean, or how does that work? So even from the back of the room, I could, make sure that the kids were getting what they needed for the upcoming test, but it was kind of liberating for everyone, for the kids, because they would do it. It's not just me all the time up in the front, and for me, it's like you're an actor in a sense in the front of the classroom, right?
Yeah.
You're on, and so for that 20 minutes or so, I could kind of relax, and
Right.
even though I was like engaged, it's nice for the teacher to do that too. So it's just another way to get the kids involved in the whole thing.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's not rocket science. It's natural being human with other human beings. They just happen to be younger.
Yeah, we would do that too. I would invite them up to show me their breathing techniques and to show me what does this look like, and then they would be the teacher for the rest of the class, and I would love to see them just shine and share and really just blossom into their. If we give them a space where they feel safe, they blossom. That's it. It's that simple. If we give them the space to feel safe, they're going to express themselves. And I watched it happen. I watched it with some of these children who were so reserved in the beginning of the year, just by the end, just really, really looking for ways to express themselves and looking for more opportunity to write. They were writing 2 and 3 pages on their own we were just saying, just put a couple sentences about what you felt on the inner journey. They were going into deep detail about what they were feeling. They were talking about, because we go into the sensations and images and feelings and thoughts, and they would just, come back and say, all these sensations, like a page long of all their sensations and a page long of the images and the feelings and the thoughts. And I just read these over and over again, and I think, and I brought them to my mayor. I brought them to the mayor. I brought them to my city council, and I said, this is why we need this. And it's been proven scientifically that 50% of bullying and any violence has been decreased with a kindness program, with a program that you're bringing into the school. 50% has decreased in violence and bullying. It's like Andy said, there is no bullying when there's no competition. You're not bullying. You're not going to bully each other.
Yeah, one of the things that I've tried to tell people, like administrators and others, is that I'm less interested in a prevention program and more interested in a kindness program over an anti-bullying. I know that for a lot of cases that's the way that we need to phrase it to get something rolling. But let's focus on what we want instead of what we don't want, and let's help the students learn how to do that as well. And like Karen says, that's what ends up happening. You focus on the positive and give an environment in which the students feel safe and secure, and then that thing that is the negative, that is what gets all the attention, because we have such a negativity bias as humans anyway, that's becomes less of an issue.
Well, I really felt like it was important that the bully was heard too.
Right.
I really felt that it was important. And when I asked the teacher, I'd say, because this was a very, very structured class. Like when I would come, she would say, yeah, Jocelyn's been getting bullied and Mary's been really bullying her. And we would sit down and we would talk. We would say, why is this happening? And let's talk about where is this coming from Mary, so that Mary felt heard and seen and validated in her feelings, so that she could feel safe, not to bully, but to share what she was feeling. And the same thing for Jocelyn. Jocelyn, she would just cringe down, like she wouldn't want to talk, and she would just cringe down. By the end, she was sitting up and I feel when this happens, and I was just like, yes, Jocelyn, she's 2nd grade. So this is for the rest of her life. She's going to have these skills.
That's right, exactly. And as you were both talking about bullying, I was remembering, in terms of nonviolent communication and that whole process and framework, they don't really talk about bullying because it's really about the needs that are not being met,
right,
of the person who's doing that, the aggressive person is, and so like what you were just saying, Karen, that listening to that person is essential, and
not alienating them and putting them like in a, you need to go have a timeout, or you need to go think about what you've done. It really is not the smartest way to do it, because, when you do that, then they're feeling, and the same thing with our prison system, it's like when we do that, we are not giving them an opportunity to, like Andy said, to reflect on what they're feeling. We're just saying, you shouldn't feel that way and you shouldn't act like that. And that's just, you need to go think about it. And I just think that that's not working. Obviously it's not working, because these kids who are, becoming violent are becoming really violent and really scary, so that it doesn't feel safe for these other kids to be able to go to school. And so we need to create a place where there's, open lines of communication, where people feel like even if I am angry, it's okay. I can learn how to express my anger without being violent. And I love the nonviolent communication. You know, I took the course also and just finished a year-long course with Tom Bond, and so excited about it because I love all of the work that is being done with the compassion course. And I'm excited to really expand that into ways that we can do that in our community. And so, Andy, is your school still, did somebody take over your school, or did they keep it going in any form?
So I decided to step down. That, you know, I kind of felt like I had done what I wanted to do, and wanted to move on to do some new things. And
right.
I mentioned to you before we went live, you know, some of what that is. So yeah, but the school's still going. So they brought in an interim director for the year that just wrapped up, and I believe they've now hired her to be the permanent director, and the teaching staff remains intact. And so, yeah, the school's thriving.
So since 1994, this school has been intact. That is incredible. That is, what an accomplishment. You must be so, so happy about that.
Yeah, it's a gratifying thing to look back and think that that's something I was involved in. I've said to people that the creation of that was really something that it kind of came through as opposed from me. You know, it was
it's a divine idea. Just like kindness changes everything is a divine idea. We the world is a divine idea. You know, we know that we know that this is, but we have to be the physical legs and arms of it if it's gonna fly.
And then anything along these lines, I think, and this may be how we wrap up, is this idea of what is it? We can't do this alone. I mean, there is this need of this collective. And so while certain things may, you know, come through a particular individual, there were, I mean, continue to be all kinds of people who then recognized that. And I find myself creating kind of a hold, like a cup or something that would allow that next thing to happen. I couldn't have done it by myself, in other words. And I mean, that's one of the critical pieces, is that I have long tried to explain to students that they've come to, when they were enrolled, they come to a community school, that this isn't something that's just about you, it's really about us. And then when you start looking at that, there's you, there's me, and there's us. 1 + 1 is 3. You, me, and us is the third, the three things. And that's just a critical piece for young people to start to grasp, where developmentally, initially they see there's just two things.
Right. And we have the 3 eyes that make up a we, right, Rick? So let's talk about those 3 eyes as we do wrap up, because everyone who's listening to this is not a monologue. This is a dialogue. We want to hear from you. We want you to type into the chat any questions, any comments, what you've been doing in your corner of the world. We want you to join us at we.net and become part of the we team. We need everybody to work together to really create the kind of world that works for all of us. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, just type those into the chat and let us know where you are in the world. Type in the chat where you're watching from, and let us know how we can work together and really, really bring this world to a place where we're all working together to have a world that works for all of us. And Rick, those 3 eyes make
the 3 eyes. So, and this is really like what We the World is all about, our goal, our strategy, and everything. Inspire, inform, and involve. 3 eyes that make a we.
And we hope that we inspired, and we hope that we, brought you some information that made you think about, how can I get involved? So that's what this show is all about. We spend all of our time coming together, finding you the amazing guests so that we can put these shows together so that you who are watching right now feel inspired to get involved. That's what this is all about. And we'd love to see you join us at We the World. If you're an organization, you can join at we.net partners. And how many partners are there now, Rick? There's so many.
So many, and they're signing up like every week. There are new partners.
In all different sectors. So we have the 11 themes. And now we're creating Yeah, and now we're getting ready for our 15th anniversary of the 11 Days of Global Unity. And we have some incredible things lined up for September. You want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. So people can go to we.net and sign up as an individual to join the We team, or as an organization to participate in one or more of the 11 campaigns to transform our world that are part of the 11 Days of Global Unity. The campaigns go all year round. The 11 days go from September 11th through September 21st, which is the UN International Day of Peace. So that's important. And one of those campaigns is children and youth. So if you are inspired by what we've been talking about on this show, then you can be part of that campaign, and we can collaborate on bringing these ideas maybe to your local schools. And or we could set up another online event where you bring some of us in to discuss this with people in your local community. I mean, there are all kinds of possibilities. June is International Children's Month, so there you go.
And you can go to internationalchildrensmonth.com, and there's a platform that has 365 days worth of incredible activities and ideas. The platform is filled with all kinds of ways to help the planet, ways to be involved with elders and youth uniting to help the planet, ways for people to learn through music, through art, all kinds of incredible a free platform. So you go to internationalchildrensmonth.com, and we will have Heidi Little, who's going to be sharing with us more about the great events. And please, wherever you are in the world, on June 21st, we're having a global wave of love for our children. And anywhere you are in the world at 1:11 in your heart zone, in your time zone, we would ask you to just hold the vision of a planet and a world that is respectful and cooperative and kind and compassionate to every child on the planet. So
exactly.
A world like that would be an incredible place to live. And I think we're loving that into this reality. I think each day that we take this time and we find ways that we are informing, inspiring, and getting involved, we are what we've been waiting for.
That's right, we are. And also I wanted to mention an urgent message from your children. That's a big part of International Children's Month, and it goes all year round. It's a way that children from 12 years old and under can express their fears, their concerns, and their hopes for the future of the planet.
You can go to weyourchildren.org.
weyourchildren.org and be part of that campaign. I also wanted to mention that coming up on June 19th is the new start of the Compassion course, which Karen was talking about. It's a year-long course that happens like once a week. There's an inspiring message and important message with tools for using nonviolent communication, tools for interconnecting, and not only preventing conflict, but resolving conflict at all age levels. And so you can find out about that by going to compassioncourse.org. And please, if you do wind up signing up, please mention that you heard about it through We the World. And Tom Bond initiates that course. Let's see, any other announcements?
Well, you can go to globalunitycalendar.org, and you can get all the behind the scenes events that are going on all over the world. And you can
Right.
also, if you're a partner or a volunteer for the We team, you can share your events, which will help get amplified by the work of the Compassion Games and Unify and our Global Unity Calendar. So we would really encourage you to utilize these platforms that we've created so that we can answer that question once again. What can we do together that we cannot do on our own? And Rick, what's that last beautiful comment that we say at the end of the show that our dear friend gave us?
Sure. And also one right before that, our next Welcome to We show will air on July 16th. It's always the third Tuesday of each month. So I just want to mention that. And our dear friend, Jonathan Granoff, who was actually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, and he helped us to launch the We campaign and launch We.net. And at that launch event, he was the keynote speaker. And the last thing he said was, I hope that we expands so much that there is no longer any them.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Andy Smallman. Thank you, Karen Palmer. Thank you, everyone who's been part of this and who's been watching and participating in this show. Thank you.
We're so grateful for every one of you. And please remember that you can share this, whether you're watching live or on the replay, you can share this and keep amplifying the good work that we are doing. And you are part of the we. So remember, join us at we.net. See how you can get involved as an individual, and also look into ways that you can help your own community to become involved, because this is something that's really, really necessary and needed for our world. And when we realize that we're all in this together, we start to see that there really is no separation. We're all in this together. And when we look at how our education system is, we can see that there are places that we can help. And if we look at the ways that we can be part of the solution and not part of the problem, then we'll really start to be doing something really wonderful. So if you feel like you're part of the solution, we want to hear from you. So let us know. There's ways you can reach us. I'm Karen Palmer at wetheworld.org. And Rick, best ways for people to connect online for you, and Andy, best ways?
We.net.
And Andy, best ways people can connect with you?
And go to kindliving.net.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful time. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.